Did you know that all of the planets in the solar system could fit between the Earth and the Moon? It's pretty wild, and in order for it to fit, you'd have to tilt some of the planets sideways. Jupiter and Saturn are wider on their equator compared to other parts of the planet, so you'd have to rotate those. But all of the planets would fit, which blows my mind a little bit. Did you know that if in space you press two pieces of the same kind of metal together, they can completely connect into one piece without any heat being applied? This weird effect is called cold welding, and it happens because in the vacuum of space, unlike here on Earth, there aren't air particles or anything else between the pieces of metal. They can actually share electrons when pressure is applied, and they think that they're a piece of the same material and they weld together. Although in reality, any piece of metal or other objects here on Earth interacts with the oxygen around us and something called oxidation occurs. This is why metal rusts. And so a spaceship sent from Earth to space won't all of a sudden weld into one solid piece because there are these oxidation layers. So for cold welding to happen, we have to manually remove the oxidation layers, and then this effect can happen. This kind of cold welding can also happen on Earth if done in a vacuum. But normally to weld things together on Earth, heat needs to be applied. This is a real image from NASA of the strongest solar flare ever recorded. So solar flares are localized eruptions of electromagnetic energy coming from the sun. And sometimes they're strong enough to impact the Earth. This one happened in 2001, and thankfully it was not directed at the Earth. But even so, it still caused global radio blackouts. Solar particles were thrown up at speeds of up to 7.2 million kilometers per hour. Pretty terrifying and pretty amazing, but again, thankfully this wasn't directed directly at the Earth. The moon appears to be the same size in the sky as the sun to us, but this is actually because of a really crazy coincidence. The moon is 1/400th the size of the sun, but it's also 1/400th the distance away from Earth, so the angular size to us is the exact same. However, this wasn't always the case, and it's going to change. The moon is slowly moving away from the Earth at 3.8 centimeters per year. So millions of years ago, the moon looked even larger in the sky, and far into the future, it will look smaller. The current state of the moon appearing to be the same size as the sun to us is a coincidence not shared by any other known planet-moon combination. Did you know that the Perseverance Mars Rover has a crazy laser on it that can vaporize rocks from up to 23 feet or 7 meters away? So why does it have this crazy laser? The whole purpose is to blow up rocks and then use infrared sensors to look at the dust that comes up. And those sensors can determine the composition of those rocks. They can figure out what it's made out of, even if they're in a spot that the rover can't actually navigate to. But also, no aliens better mess with the rover, or they're in for a bit of a surprise with this terrifying laser. Here are 5 mind-blowing facts about the universe that make me feel really small. The Milky Way galaxy is so big that it takes light 1,000 years to travel from one side of it to the other. The sun accounts for almost all the mass in the solar system, leaving only 0.2% left for all of the planets. If the sun was the size of a typical front door, Earth would be about the size of a nickel. Scientists estimate that about 71% of everything in the universe is dark energy, while 24% of everything in the universe is dark matter. So everything else, all atoms on Earth, all physical atoms everywhere else in space, only makes up about 5% of what's in the universe. Do you want me to do a deeper dive into any of these facts? If so, let me know down in the comments. There might be life on Venus. Researchers have discovered something called phosphenes, a chemical compound that's known as a byproduct of life in Venus's clouds, in their atmosphere. Venus is not a very hospitable planet. It has really high temperatures, high pressures, it rains sulfuric acid, so it's definitely not someplace we would think to look for life. But it has these phosphenes in the atmosphere, and these things can be created through inorganic processes. But the researchers' models show that the amount of phosphenes in the clouds could not have been made through inorganic methods. So this in no way says that yes, there is life on Venus, but it's definitely a sign that we should check out our closest neighbor a little more carefully, whether it's microbes floating in the atmosphere, or who knows, some weird kind of aerial aliens in the clouds of Venus. But it's definitely something interesting that I hope we get more news on. In February, scientists discovered a potentially habitable exoplanet only 31 light years away from us. In terms of the grand scheme of space, that's pretty close. This planet is called Wolf 1069b, and it's in the habitable zone around a red dwarf star. One thing that's different about this planet compared to Earth is that it's tidally locked with its star. That means that as it moves around it, it always has one face facing the sun, while the other face is facing further away. Kind of like how the moon goes around the Earth. So this isn't a real picture of the planet, this is just an artist's example. But in that situation, one side of the planet would be warm and have the potential to be the home for life, while the other side that faces away from the star would be really cold and not very good for having life on it. So definitely interested to see if scientists learn more about its atmosphere or any other signs as to if this planet could be a future home for humans. This is the biggest thing in the known universe. It's a supercluster of galaxies that includes us, the Milky Way galaxy. We're shown by the red dot in this image. This thing is called the Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, and it's 10 billion light years across. The image here is a still shot from a computer simulation from a video released by the Nature journal. This image compares a current map of Mars versus a simulated map of what it would have looked like 3.5 billion years ago. Now we know Mars as a crimson, frozen planet, but used to have ancient oceans on it, and it was a warmer, wetter planet. Scientists just discovered an ultramassive black hole with a mass 33 billion times greater than our sun. This is approaching the theoretical limit of how big a black hole should be able to be according to our current scientific models. This monster was discovered on April 2nd, and it is 2.7 billion light years away from us. Smaller black holes can be 10 to 100 times greater of a mass compared to our sun, but some of these ones with tens of billion times greater the mass are considered ultramassive black holes. The way that scientists can determine the mass of something like a black hole is through its level of gravitational lensing. So something with such a large mass distorts the light going around it. So if we're looking at a galaxy or something and then this black hole passes between us and that, the angle of distortion is proportional to the mass of the object.